What if I told you that God Himself wants you to prosper? Not in the hollow, glittering way the world screams about, but in a way that fills your soul to bursting while the world scratches its head in confusion. Picture this: your bank account whispers emptiness, but your heart roars with purpose. Your hands hold little, yet your spirit overflows. This is the divine tension every believer faces, the clash between chasing temporary treasure and building eternal wealth. Let me ask you plainly, when your last breath fades, will your legacy be counted in dollars or in destinies? This isn't some theoretical debate. This is about who you're becoming right now, today, as you wrestle with bills, dreams, and the quiet fear that maybe faith and finances can't coexist. Let's cut through the noise. Remember Solomon, that young king staring down an impossible task. God appeared to him in a dream and said, "Whatever you want, I'll give it to you." Now, Solomon could have grabbed for power, riches, or fame. The world's playbook demands those things. But he didn't. He asked for wisdom, a discerning heart to lead God's people well. And here's the kicker. Because he sought what mattered to God, God gave him not just wisdom, but wealth and honor beyond measure. The message rings clear: pursue what God values first, and everything else follows. Not as a reward, but as a natural result of aligning with His design. This is urgent. Why? Because money isn't neutral, it's a mirror. It shows us who we really are. Every financial decision, whether you hoard, give, chase, or worship, exposes your heart's true allegiance. For seniors, this tension sharpens. You're weighing inheritances, retirement, and the looming question: did I steward my life well? Maybe you've seen friends trade their integrity for a fat portfolio, or watched family fractures over inheritances. This isn't about avoiding wealth. It's about refusing to let wealth avoid God's purpose for your life. So what's the path forward? How do you thrive financially without drowning your faith? We'll unpack 5 bedrock principles, straight from Scripture, that don't just promise prosperity but redefine it. You'll discover why generosity is your greatest financial weapon, how work becomes worship, and why true security has nothing to do with stock markets. We'll confront the idolatry of greed and the lie of scarcity, replacing them with God's radical economy. This isn't a prosperity gospel. It's a surrender gospel, one where you win by yielding, gain by giving, and live richly by dying daily. Let's get raw. Let's get honest. The world says claw your way to the top. Christ says lay your treasures at His feet. One road leaves you breathless and empty. The other, it leads to a life where your wallet and your worship walk hand in hand. The choice is yours, but choose fast. Every dollar you earn, save, or spend is writing the story of your heart. Let's write one that echoes into eternity. After all, didn't He promise, "Seek first the kingdom, and all these things will be added to you"? That's not a footnote. That's the foundation. Let's build. Principle wet C. Stewardship is worship, the parable of the talents. Let's shatter the first lie the enemy uses to paralyze believers financially: the delusion of ownership. You think that paycheck is yours, that retirement account, that inheritance. Here's the truth that will either set you free or make you squirm: you own nothing. You never did. You're a steward, a manager, of resources entrusted to you by the one who created galaxies with a whisper. Let me take you to a story Jesus told that rips the mask off our money myths. Picture a wealthy master preparing to travel. He calls 3 servants. To one, he hands 5 talents, a fortune; to another 2; to the last one, no explanations, no micromanaging. Just a command: do business with these until I return. The first 2 servants, they hustle, they trade, they take risks, they treat the master's money like it's, well, the master's money. The third, he digs a hole, buries the talent, preserves it, protects it. When the master returns, the first 2 double their investments. "Well done, good and faithful servant," thunders the master. "You've been faithful over little, I'll put you in charge of much." But the third servant, he's shaking. He mumbles excuses. "I knew you were a hard man. I was afraid." And the master's response, brutal: "You wicked, lazy servant." He takes the talent and gives it to the one with 10. Let's freeze this scene. The master didn't praise the first 2 for their results. He celebrated their faithfulness. The third servant wasn't punished for poor returns, but for paralyzed inaction. His sin, hoarding under the guise of safety. His crime, treating the master's resources as his own. Here's the gut punch: God isn't grading your net worth. He's examining your heart's posture toward what He's lent you, that savings account, training ground, that side hustle, worship, that budget, a prayer ledger. Modern example, meet Maria, a single mom working 2 jobs. Every Friday night she sits at her kitchen table with her Bible, her bills, and her calculator. As she allocates funds, 50 to groceries, $50 to gas, 10 to savings, she prays over each line. Lord, multiply this like you did the loaves. Help me steward what's yours. Her budgeting isn't spreadsheets, it's surrender. Contrast this with Jake, a 6-figure earner who hoards bonuses, terrified of market crashes. He tithes sporadically, gives begrudgingly, and views his $400 as his real security. Both are stewards. Only one is worshiping. Or take Ahmed, a tech worker who invests aggressively, not in crypto, but in kingdom ventures. He funds microloans for Kenyan farmers, backs clean water projects, and mentors foster kids. When colleagues chase luxury cars, he drives a used Honda and laughs. Why polish the master's tools when he's coming back soon? Ahmed isn't just building wealth. He's storing up treasure no moth can touch. The parable's warning screams across centuries: burying resources is not humility, it's rebellion. Fear masquerading as caution still earns the master's rebuke. Every dollar you clutch in anxiety shouts, I don't trust the giver. But here's the flip side: every risk taken in faith, every dime sound boldly, every act of generosity, these are incense rising to heaven. Stewardship isn't a financial strategy, it's a love language. So let's get practical. When you sit to pay bills, frame it as a priesthood. That rent check, a declaration that God provides; that donation, warfare against greed; that investment, a vote of confidence in God's economy. Even your debt repayment becomes an altar where you kneel and say, train me, Lord. Teach me faithfulness. The world screams, more for me. The cross whispers, all for him. Your bank statement is either a monument to fear or a testament to faith. Choose, act, invest, give. Because when the master returns, he won't ask, how much did you make? He'll demand, what did you do with what I gave you? The answer to that question starts today. As the psalmist roared, the earth is the Lord's, and everything in it. Live like you believe it. Die empty. Return to him what was always his. And hear those words echoing through eternity: well done. Principle 20. Generosity as warfare, the widow's mite. Now let's rip the veil off the second lie Satan uses to bankrupt your destiny. The myth that generosity is for after you've made it. The world says, when I have enough, I'll give. God thunders, you'll never have enough until you give. Let's march straight into the temple courts of Mark 12, where Jesus stages a divine ambush. The air reeks of pride. Robed men strut past offering boxes, their coins clattering like cymbals. Look at me, look at my sacrifice, look at my piety. Then she enters, a widow. Threadbare cloak, calloused hands, 2 copper coins, worth less than a crumb from the rich men's banquets. But when she drops those mites into the box, the sound detonates in heaven. Jesus spins to his disciples, voice blazing, truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all the others. They gave out of their surplus. She gave out of her poverty, all she had to live on. Let that scene gut you. The wealthy's offerings were noise, hers was warfare. They donated leftovers. She surrendered her lifeline. They funded a temple, she funded eternity. Why? Because generosity isn't measured by what you give but by what you have left after you give. Satan's strategy is simple: shrink your vision of provision until you're convinced you're the source. He wants you clutching your wallet like Gollum with his ring, whispering my precious as your soul shrivels. But God's economy operates on divine math. Give what you don't have to get what you can't lose. Meet Tasha, a college student surviving on instant noodles. When her church launches a food drive, she debates, keep my last 20 or give it. She hears the whisper, you can't afford to. But she slaps down that cash, praying, God, you fed 5,000 with a lunchbox, multiply this. 3 days later, her professor offers her a paid research gig she never applied for. Coincidence or a strike against the kingdom of lack? Contrast this with Derek, a millionaire who writes 10,000 checks while grumbling about taxes. His mansion's vaults overflow, but his soul's on life support. Tasha's 2 coins scream louder in heaven than Derek's bloodless donations. Proverbs 11:4-25 drops the mic. One person gives freely yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly but comes to poverty. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. Notice the verbs gives freely versus withholds unduly. This isn't a money hack. It's hand-to-hand combat. Every time you tithe when bills pile up, you're storming hell's gates. Every time you bless an enemy, You're plundering Satan's pantry. That files you slip the homeless man, it's not charity. It's a Molotov cocktail hurled at the spirit of greed. Here's the raw truth. Your bank account is a trench in the spiritual battlefield. When you hoard, you're dug into Satan's foxhole. When you give, you're charging enemy lines with heaven's artillery. The widow's mites weren't a donation. They were a declaration: my God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. My jar of flour won't run dry. My oil won't fail. I fight with weapons the world can't see, so test me. Test him. Next time fear hisses, hold back, defy it. Tip the waitress double. Sponsor the orphan. Buy the groceries for the single mom behind you. Watch what happens. I've seen it. A mechanic who tithed his last 50 found a rare car part worth thousands in his dumpster. A grandma who donated her medication money woke up symptom-free. A teenager who gave his sneakers to a refugee got a scholarship he never qualified for. Coincidence? Only if you think God's broke. The kingdom's currency runs on a paradoxy. You have to give it away to keep it. Satin hoards. God multiplies, which force fuels your spending. When you shift from "can I afford to give" to "can I afford not to," that's when you unlock nuclear-grade faith. The widow's story wasn't recorded to guilt you. It's a playbook. She weaponized her lack, and heaven answered with abundance. So here's your charge: become a financial terrorist against hell's regime. Turn your budget into a battlefield. Your generosity isn't just kindness. It's a strategic strike. Every act of giving shouts, my God supplies all my needs, and when the enemy tries to tally your losses, heaven's accountants will laugh. They've seen this before. A boy's lunch becomes a feast. A jar of oil outlasts a famine. 2 copper coins echo for millennia. As the prophet Malachi dares us, test me in this, see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven. The widow tested, Tasha tested. Now will you bury your coins or unleash them? The answer will echo in eternity. Give and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together and running over. Run toward the overflow. Principle 30. Contentment is power. The desert manna test. Now let's drag greed into the light and strip it bare. You want to talk about slavery? Look no further than the obsession with more. It's a chain that clatters louder the tighter you grip it. Let's march into the desert with the Israelites in Exodus 16, where God drops a bomb called manna. Picture this: a scorching wilderness, a million hungry mouths, and heaven's grocery store opens at dawn. Flakes of bread blanket the ground, sweet as honey, fresh as mercy. But here's the catch: take only what you need for today. No stockpiling, no pantries bulging with tomorrow's worry. Yet some folks ignore the warning. They scoop extra, stash it in jars, smuggle it into tents. By morning, rot, stench, maggots. God's message thunders across the sand: hoarding isn't frugality, it's rebellion. I withhold excess to protect you from the poison of self-sufficiency. Let that sink into your bones. Every time you cling to money like a life raft, you're replaying the desert rebellion. You're telling God your daily bread isn't enough. I need a backup plan. But here's the brutal truth: excess doesn't make you secure. It makes you a target. A man I knew, let's call him Carl, built a fortune trading stocks. His garage, packed with vintage cars, his closets, designer suits with tags still on. But his marriage crumbled. His kids called him the Am. One night, he stood on his penthouse balcony, staring at the city lights and whispered, "Is this all?" Carl had everything but a soul. Contrast that with Lydia, a single mom working 2 jobs. Her bank account, lean, her heart overflowing. She'd pray over her bills: God, you split the Red Sea, part my debts. And somehow, groceries stretched. Rent got paid, her kids never missed a meal. Carl's mansions couldn't buy Lydia's peace. Paul hammers this home in Philippians 4:7-1-25. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. The Greek word for secret, here mu, a mystery revealed only to the initiated. Paul's not preaching positive thinking. He's exposing a cosmic hack. Contentment isn't passive acceptance. It's active defiance. It's staring at an empty fridge and declaring, my God will supply. It's losing a job and singing hymns in the storm. Modern culture screams, you deserve luxury, upgrade. Treat yourself, but Paul whispers, I've had plenty, I've had nothing. Christ stays the same. Let's get uncomfortably practical. Open your bank app. Scroll through last month's transactions. Does your budget scream trust or terror? Are you investing in eternal dividends or building sandcastles in a hurricane? Meet Javier. He tithes 20% of his construction worker salary. His friends mock him, you're throwing money away, but Javier sleeps like a baby. when his truck breaks down, a stranger pays the repair. When his daughter gets sick, anonymous grocery bags appear. Now meet Emily, a corporate lawyer with 6 figures in savings. She checks her portfolio hourly, panics if the market dips, popcorn budgets for movies. Her anxiety's so thick you could slice it. Javier's bank account is smaller, but his life is larger. Emily's riches are a gilded cage. The desert manna test isn't ancient history. It's your daily invitation. Every dollar you grasp too tightly starts to stink. Every act of surrender smells like heaven. Jesus didn't say, "Blessed are the rich." He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." The translation, "Blessed are those gutsy enough to admit, I can't do this alone." The widow's mites, the manna, Lydia's kitchen, they're all the same story. God doesn't need your money. He's after your freedom. So here's your challenge: audit your life. How much of your hustle is faith, and how much is fear? When you obsess over retirement accounts but neglect eternal investments, you're building a kingdom of dust. Paul's secret isn't a poverty vow. It's a wealth transfer. You trade anxiety for awe, greed for gratitude, slavery for sovereignty. The Israelites begged for Egypt's leeks and garlic while holding heaven's bread. Don't repeat their mistake. I leave you with Jesus' scalding words in Luke 12:50. Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. Your contentment isn't a feeling, it's a weapon. Wield it. Break chains with it. Let your bank statements preach louder than your prayers. The manna is falling. The choice is yours. Gather just enough and walk in freedom, or hoard and rot. The desert doesn't lie. Your soul's survival depends on this truth. Contentment isn't complacency. It's the nuclear option against hell's scarcity lie. Now go live like you're already full. Principle 40. Work as divine partnership. Nehemiah rebuilding the wall. But how do we move from clinging to contentment into the holy grind of faith-fueled work? Let's smash the lie that God wants you passive or paralyzed. Nehemiah's story isn't a TED Talk on delegation. It's blood, blisters, and bricks. Picture Jerusalem's ruins, crumbled walls, charred gates, a people disgraced. Nehemiah hears the news and weeps. But he doesn't stop at prayer. He doesn't host a pity party. He fasts, he plans, he petitions the king. Then he marches into the wreckage with a trowel in one hand and a sword in the other. The man rebuilds a wall in 52 days while fighting off schemers, mockers, and death threats. When Sanballat ridicules him, Nehemiah doesn't cower or compromise. He barks, "I'm doing a great work. I can't come down." Nehemiah 63. That's divine partnership. Knees calloused from prayer, hands raw from labor. Let's gut the prosperity gospel's empty promises. God isn't a vending machine where you insert a tithe and out pops a Tesla. Nehemiah 14:6 says the people worked with all their heart. Notice the order: faith ignites the work, work proves the faith. Imagine a farmer who prays for rain but never plows. That's not faith, it's spiritual theater. I met a woman named Tasha who dreamed of opening a shelter for trafficked girls. She didn't just post prayer hands on social media. She got certified in counseling, pounded the pavement for grants, turned her garage into a temporary safe house. When funds ran low, she hosted car washes with her kids. When neighbors protested, she invited them for coffee and changed their minds. Today, her shelter houses 20 survivors. Tasha's mantra: pray like it's God's job, work like it's mine. Paul thunders in Colossians 3:3, work as unto the Lord, not for applause, promotions, or clout, not to outshine your coworkers or silence your insecurities. Divine partnership means scrubbing toilets, drafting reports, or changing diapers with the same passion as preaching to thousands. Because here's the kicker: God sees the unseen. He's in the spreadsheet you stay late to perfect, the overtime shift you pick up to keep the lights on, the midnight oil burn to serve your family. I think of Jose, a janitor at a megachurch. While pastors preached to crowds, Jose mopped floors, polished pews, and whispered, "Jesus, let my work worship you." One Sunday, a visitor lingered after service, tears streaming. He'd been ready to end his life, but found hope in a spotless sanctuary. Jose's mop became a ministry. But wait, don't confuse hustle with holiness. Burnout isn't a badge of honor, it's a white flag waved at the enemy. The world screams, grind harder, sleep less, compete. But God whispers, rest, trust, let me fuel your fire. I've watched entrepreneurs idolize business, their souls shrinking as their calendars bloated. They chase success like it's oxygen, only to suffocate under the weight. Remember, Nehemiah's crew rebuilt the wall without neglecting their families or health. They worked in shifts, half holding spears, half stacking stones. Nehemiah 40:61. Even warriors need to rotate. Take Luke, a startup founder who worshipped at the altar of hustle, 18-hour days, microwaved meals, skipped his kid's recital to close a deal. Then his body rebelled. Panic attacks, insomnia, a hospital scare. During recovery, he read Jesus' words, "What good is it to gain the whole world yet forfeit your soul?" Mark 8:36. Luke now runs his company on radical margins, prays before meetings, delegates fiercely, unplugs on Sundays. His profits dipped maybe, but his peace skyrocketed. Here's the sacred equation: faith plus work partnership. Subtract faith and work becomes a god. Subtract work and faith becomes a fraud. Nehemiah didn't rebuild the wall with positive affirmations. He rallied broken people to pick up broken stones and trust a whole God. So whether you're drafting sermons or driving semis, hear this: your labor isn't a ladder to heaven. It's a love letter from heaven. Every email sent, diaper changed, or burger flipped can echo eternity if done in partnership with Him. Wrap your hands around this truth: you're not alone in the grind. The same God who fortified Nehemiah's crew strengthens your weary arms. The next time exhaustion whispers, "Quit," or pride hisses, "More," remember. Burnout mocks God's sovereignty, while restful labor crowns Him as King. Step into your calling with audacity. Work like Nehemiah, eyes wide open to opposition, heart welded to the Father's will. Let your sweat anoint the ordinary into the extraordinary. As the Lord declared through Haggai, "Be strong, all you people of the land, and work, for I am with you." Haggai 2:4-4. Now grab your trowel, the wall awaits. Principle 5. Eternal ROI over earthly gains, the rich young ruler's choice. But what happens when the grind becomes a god? When the very work God called us to becomes chains around our hearts? Let's confront the elephant in the room, the rich young ruler's haunting choice. Picture him sprinting toward Jesus, robes flapping, breathless with ambition. He kneels in the dust, eyes blazing. "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Mark 10:1-7. Notice his question: do, achieve, earn, control. Jesus sees straight through the performance. He names the commandments, and the man puffs up. "All these I've kept since I was a boy." v20. But here's the gut punch: Jesus doesn't applaud his resume. He goes for the idol lurking in the shadows. "Own thing you lack, sell everything you have, give to the poor, and follow me." v21. The man's face crumples. He doesn't argue, doesn't negotiate. He turns and walks away, shackled not by wealth itself, but by his death grip on it. Let's get this straight. Jesus isn't anti-resources. He's anti-heart slavery. The issue isn't the mansion, the portfolio, the luxury car. It's the lie that these things define your worth, your security, your future. Imagine a man clinging to a life raft in a kiddie pool while Jesus stands knee-deep in the ocean shouting, "Let go. I'll give you the sea." But we white-knuckle the raft, terrified of the surrender that leads to true freedom. I know a CEO who tithed faithfully, prayed daily, yet secretly measured his value by his stock options. When the market crashed, so did his mental health. His wife begged him to seek counseling, but he growled, "I'll fix this myself." One night, he collapsed sobbing in his home office, surrounded by screens flashing red. In that brokenness, he finally heard Jesus' question. What good is your portfolio if you've lost your soul? The rich young ruler's story isn't about philanthropy. It's about liberation. Jesus doesn't demand poverty, he demands priority. Temporal gains glitter but corrode. Eternal rewards may look invisible but outlast supernovas. Think of it like this: you're offered 2 checks. One clears today but bounces in a decade. The other takes a lifetime to mature but funds eternity. Which do you cash? I've watched retirees hoard savings paralyzed by what-ifs, while missionaries in war zones sleep peacefully, sustained by manna-like provision. A single mom I know, Rosa, chose eternal ROI when she donated her last $20 to a struggling neighbor, then found groceries anonymously delivered to her porch that same night. God doesn't call us to reckless poverty, he invites us to reckless trust. Jesus, a word sliced deep. How hard it is for the rich to enter the kingdom of God. Mark 10:23. The disciples gasp, "Then who can be saved?" Here's the twist. Jesus isn't slamming heaven's gates on the wealthy. He's spotlighting the impossibility of self-salvation. A camel squeezing through a needle's eye. Laughable. But with God all things are possible. v27. Even the most entrenched idolater can be unstuck. Chains shatter, hearts thaw. Priorities flip. I've seen drug dealers turn pastors, Wall Street sharks turned orphan advocates. Influencers traded fame for feeding the hungry. When God's Spirit moves, wallets open, schedules clear, and mine becomes yours. Oh, so let's audit our lives. What earthly gains are we mistaking for eternal security? That promotion we're chasing like it's our salvation. The social media followers we worship like a congregation. The retirement plan we guard like a golden calf. I'll never forget a billionaire I met at a conference. He'd built empires, flown private jets, dined with presidents. But over coffee, he whispered, "I'd trade it all for one assurance that I'm right with God." His hands shook as he confessed, "I'm the rich young ruler." That day, he didn't walk away. He knelt. The call isn't to poverty, it's to freedom. To hold possessions so loosely they can't hold you back. To work not for a legacy that rusts, but a crown that glows. To bank not on Wall Street's whims, but heaven's economy. When we invest in the eternal, feeding the hungry, sheltering the orphan, preaching the gospel, we're not just writing checks. We're storing up treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy. The Matthew 60:20. So what's your rich young ruler moment? What's God asking you to release to grasp something greater? Maybe it's that grudge you've nursed like a prized possession. The toxic relationship you've clung to for comfort. The dream you've idolized above the dreamgiver. Whatever it is, hear this. The same God who split the Red Sea can part your chains. The same power that raised Christ from the dead can resurrect your priorities. You don't have to walk away sorrowful. You can kneel and rise lighter. The invitation thunders through the ages. Come, follow me. Not come earn my love. Not come negotiate terms. But come, trade your crumbling kingdom for mine. Let's choose daily. Let's live audaciously. Let's fix our eyes not on what's fading, but on the one who shouts through the prophet Malachi, "Test me in this, see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven." Malachi 300. The eternal Roy isn't a gamble, it's a guarantee. Now drop the mic of your fear, the king awaits. Conclusion: the unshackable economy. Imagine Solomon, the king who had it all. Palaces dripping in gold, vineyards stretching to the horizon, a reputation that made foreign rulers tremble. Yet when God appeared to him in a dream and said, "Ask for whatever you want," Solomon didn't beg for bigger barns or thicker armor. He didn't whisper, "More land, more power, more pleasure." No, he shocked heaven itself by demanding wisdom. "Give me a discerning heart," he said, "to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong." 1 Kings 3:9. And here's the kicker: God didn't just grant the request, he threw in riches and honor as a bonus. Why? Because Solomon got the order right. Wisdom first, prosperity follows, not the other way around. Let me break this down for you. When you chase money, you'll always be exhausted. When you chase God, money loses its grip on your soul. Jesus said it plain, "Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." So Matthew 6:33. Notice the word first, not second, not when convenient, not after you've secured your comfort. First. Priority reshapes everything. I know a contractor named Marcus who nearly lost his business during the pandemic. Clients vanished, bills piled up, fear screamed, "Cut corners, lie about costs." But Marcus chose to seek God's kingdom first. He prayed over every invoice, treated competitors with integrity, even donated materials to a struggling church. Within a year, his phone rang nonstop. Clients said, "We trust you." His business didn't just survive, it thrived. Why? He anchored his decisions in wisdom, not desperation. This isn't a prosperity gospel. This is a priority revolution. God's economy doesn't play by Wall Street's rules. It's upside down, inside out. You want abundance, let go. You want security, surrender. You want influence, serve. Picture a farmer planting seeds. He doesn't clutch them in his fist, screaming, "Mine." He opens his hand, buries them in dirt, and trusts the rain. Harvest comes not because he worried harder, but because he surrendered sooner. I've seen single moms tithe their last at 10 and find groceries on their doorstep. I've watched addicts pour their drug money into offering plates and walk out sober. I've sat with CEOs who traded shareholder applause for orphanage hugs and discovered joy no bonus could buy. But let's get raw. What's choking your heart right now? Is it that promotion you're sacrificing Sundays to chase? The Instagram feed you scroll instead of praying? The savings account you check more often than your Bible? I'll never forget meeting a woman named Alina. She'd built a real estate empire, but her soul was bankrupt. She drove a Mercedes but cried in parking lots. One night, She read Jesus' words. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Mark 80:36. She sold 3 properties, funded a rehab center, and started mentoring teen moms. Last I heard, she's still driving that Mercedes. But now it's full of laughing kids she's driving to school. Here's the truth. You were born to thrive, not just survive. But thriving starts when you stop measuring your life by your wallet and start measuring it by your worship. True wealth isn't in stored treasures but surrendered hearts. The Lord declares in Deuteronomy 80:18, "It is He who gives you power to get wealth, to confirm His covenant." Did you catch that? The purpose of wealth isn't your comfort. It's His covenant. It's not about your name on a building. It's about His name proclaimed in streets. Not about your legacy but His glory. So let's get practical. Audit your ambitions. If your bank statement vanished tomorrow, would your purpose remain? If your job title got stripped, would your identity stand? A friend of mine, a pastor in Nigeria, faced this test when militants burned his church. He stood in the ashes, Bible in hand, and preached to the smoke. Today his congregation meets under a tent, and it's packed. No stained glass, no sound system, just raw faith. He told me, "They took my building but not my mission. I'm richer now than ever." The world screams, store, secure, hoard. But heaven whispers, seek, surrender. This isn't a call to poverty, it's a call to freedom. To live with open hands and a defiant trust. To wake up each morning and declare, "God, I'm chasing you." Not a paycheck, using money, not worshiping it, building your kingdom, not my ego. When you live like that, miracles follow. Not always dollar signs, but always enough manna. Not always comfort, but always purpose. Not always ease, but always presence. So here's your charge. Stop bowing to budgets and start kneeling before the provider. Stop letting money mute your mission and start letting faith amplify it. You weren't created to be a slave to savings accounts or a mascot for materialism. You were designed to be a conduit, a pipeline of God's provision to a parched world. The Almighty doesn't need your money, He wants your trust. And when you give Him that, He'll entrust you with more than you imagine. The battle cry rings clear. Seek first His kingdom. The God who fed Elijah via ravens, funded Solomon with wisdom, and multiplied a boy's lunch for thousands hasn't changed. He's waiting for you to shift your gaze from temporary tokens to eternal treasures, to stop building sandcastles and start anchoring in stone. The choice is yours. Clutch your raft in the kiddie pool, or let go and swim in the ocean of His abundance. The King's economy is unshackable. Your inheritance is unstoppable. Now rise, surrendered, expectant, unafraid. For the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to give you victory. Deuteronomy 24. The victory is His, the wealth is His, the glory is His, and when you live like that, you'll never lose.